Hello, my name is Jeremy Perkins. I am the Director of Digital Optimization Consulting here at Indigo Slate. I have been a consultant in the IT realm for about 30 years, focusing on everything from infrastructure to security and beyond. My current focus is on digital transformation. We try to help make businesses run more efficiently and help them get from where they are to where they need to be. Joining me today on this podcast is one of my team members, John Precour, and I will hand it over to John for an intro.
Hello, John Precour. I'm senior consultant with Indigo Slate. Lots of experience in governance of enterprise IT, information security systems management, and consulting background. And similar to Jeremy, I have about 30 years of experience in tech. So that's where the senior comes from.
Indeed. And we appreciate it because John is actually really good at what he does, not to toot our own horns, but he really has made my life easier. So thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is with digital transformation, we want to talk a little bit about how AI figures into digital transformation. Since AI is a very large buzzword right now and certainly on the top of everyone's mind on how they can harness it and use it for things like digital optimization, which actually really makes sense. But what I'd like to do at the beginning here is just going to sort of set the stage, really, and define some of these terms that we're throwing around. Because if you want to get several different definitions of, what digital transformation is or what optimization is or what AI is, you can just ask 5 different people, So digital transformation is more than just having a plan, right? A plan is something that is very tactical, very thought out, executable. You know what the end goal is, and you know pretty much what the result is going to be as long as the plan is executed well, right? Transformation is more a holistic process, right? And it is a way to take your state currently and move to another state where the effects, you have an idea of what you would like to occur, but you're not exactly sure how it's going to work, right? You're not exactly sure what the end result is. You have targets, and those can be very well defined, very well researched, thought out. My goal is to go to market faster. My goal is to penetrate X% more of my market or whatever it happens to be, right? But how are you going to get there? Sometimes it is meeting your clients where they are. Sometimes it is changing your operations in such a way that you can increase your bandwidth so you can, get to the customers better. But basically, it's about reimagining everything, right? From internal processes to customer interactions to payments and leveraging all of the technologies available to help get you from where you are to where you need to be. It is certainly involves risk assessment. It involves planning, staging, testing, all these things, but it is moving from one state to a completely different state. So that's digital transformation. And let's talk a little bit about AI and how AI factors into that.
One way of describing it is digital transformation. It's a process of using digital technologies to fundamentally change how a business operates. And with AI in there, it's focusing specifically on how to leverage AI's cognitive capabilities and how to transform businesses. And I have a fun stat. It's kind of like the wow number. This is a study from IDC, a recent study that shows artificial intelligence will contribute $19.9 trillion to the global economy by 2030. Number's a little hard to wrap my head around, but $19.9 trillion. So broken down, that's every dollar spent on AI translates into $4.60 into the global economy.
That is a lot. So whenever somebody says, hey, I'm interested in learning about AI and how it can help me, it's probably something we should take seriously. As we think through AI, there's been a lot of statements that lend themselves to, hey, this is what I mean when I say AI, and it may or may not be truly artificial intelligence. It may be a mask for using machine learning technologies that already exist just solely. Now, and that's not to say that AI doesn't encompass those things, because it does. But AI, I think, is more holistic. We're talking about generative AI, but that is also a part of AI, right? But when I say AI, it doesn't mean that, I'm going to make an avatar with a fake person and a fake voice that's going to generate all this content and then teach me about this content. That's not to say you couldn't do that with AI, but I don't want that to be the norm when people think about AI and how it's going to help me, right? So when we talk about AI, talk to me a little bit about, just in general, if you could, at a high level, cognitive abilities of AI? What does that mean?
Well, we're talking about artificial intelligence and is, finding patterns in data, and then making decisions, showing a cognitive ability to make decisions on that data. So, and then there's different applications. I mean, there are those chatbots like you're talking about, or avatars, but typically it could also be, predictive analytics in business. Business is all based on patterns and, optimization based on those patterns, how to make your business better, how to make more money, how to make things run smoother. And there's also this neat effect that you can also find new discoveries in those patterns too. So you can say, there's some innovative ideas that got surfaced using AI. So it's really exciting, and I think it encompasses all those things you're talking about.
I actually like that. I think that's very all encompassing. And we talked about predictability and we talked about data analysis, right? And we talked about how it helps automate things. Personalization is another big aspect of AI, right? When I go to my doctor's website and I log in, I get a unique experience for me based off of my medical history and things that are important or should be important to me as a patient, which are not necessarily going to carry over to you or to my mom or whoever it happens to be who might log into that same portal. The other one that I wanted to talk about, and this is kind of an umbrella statement, is the innovation in general, right? And I think that you actually hit the nail on the head with that when you find patterns in business and are able to draw conclusions from those patterns and use that as a predictable method to know when to execute, what
Yep.
not to do. I think that a lot of people, when they're running their businesses, they are focused on building their widget or selling their widget. And it's hard sometimes to look back, and spend your nights or your weekends or your vacations combing over your statistical data to say, oh, well, I sold 50% more widgets in the summertime or whatever it happens to be, to find those patterns and identify and ask the questions why. A lot of these things historically have taken weeks to do. And now AI, you can feed your spreadsheets to the AI system rather and say, find me the patterns, and it will identify 5 or 6 patterns in a matter of
Yep.
minutes. That is incredibly strong, right?
Yep. And maybe it's a good time to speak a little bit about. There's a fear in that too. Like, if AI can do this better than I can in my job, or maybe my job's going away. I think it's just in a lot of cases, it's a frame of mind. It's if you can use this tool to make yourself more productive, or more efficient, or more innovative, it's actually a really big boost. As long as they have those training opportunities and they're exposed to the tools and they can use them to amplify their own role.
That is something that I think a lot of people get caught up in, the fear and the uncertainty of, is this going to put me out of a job? Well, no, not necessarily. What it might do
Yeah.
is it might make you able to focus on another aspect of your job that you're just too busy to do right now. There's a saying that I have heard several times, which is that at some point, you will either work for the machines or you will have the machines work for you, right? So if you're out there learning how to use these
Yeah.
tools and be very good at identifying where there's opportunities, all of a sudden you're driving the tools, you're driving the machines, and
Yeah.
that's something that I think a lot of people don't think about. Plus, as a business owner, if I'm able to free up resources, somebody who's really talented, who I have doing, more or less busy work because I need them to pour over these spreadsheets,
Yeah.
but instead I can focus them on helping me, refine my widget or whatever it happens to be, then that's a
Right.
win for me, right? Because now I have AI replacing that part of their job so that they can focus on helping me to be more successful in my field.
And you're empowering people to be innovative. And I think we're going to see, and we have seen, even in our business, Jeremy, but more and more across businesses, is innovation comes from everywhere. And if these tools allow people to leverage their own abilities and their own creativity by kind of offloading some of that busy work, that could we could really see a lot of great ideas pouring into businesses.
We've kind of danced around this a little bit, but why is it that this push towards AI and automation and helping with efficiency is happening right now versus, 10 years ago or whatever? Because AI more or less has been around in some state for about
Yeah.
50 years and it's gone through waves here and there, but it's really taken off recently. Why do you think that is?
You're right. This has been around for a long time, but we're finally have processing power, the technological power to support it and to grow it. And now that we have these AI tools feeding back into the design and the efficiencies, we just have this loop that keeps accelerating. We have AI tools designing, new processors. We have AI tools designing new infrastructure, new power management. So I see we're gonna have that accelerate even faster, like exponentially.
That does make sense. You're right. I mean, as the technology catches up and allows us to support more aspects of AI, the processing power, like you were just talking about. I mean, you're right. It is incredible how fast those exponential leaps happen.
I would add on top of that, there's, people are seeing the benefits to be gained from using this. Now we have the competitive aspect too. Like everyone's jumping in. Similar businesses just staying ahead. You have to use these tools now. Or it's not just using tools; it's integrating AI across your business to really stay competitive. Finding ways to really find out how to improve the business on a core level, and not just using a little tool or a widget or this or that. It's getting in, finding where you sit and where you can mature with that in your business. And of course, there's competition internationally now, and recent news, where people are waking up to the idea that you know can always be confident sitting at the top, king of the hill when it comes to AI with revelations from DeepSeek and all of that current news.
Technology does not stand still, right? It's
Yeah.
always progressing. So if you're not out there driving the change, yeah, you might get passed by somebody else who is. And I think that that's a very interesting point because yeah, I was just doing a little bit of research last night, and this DeepSeek story broke, and I was reading up on it, and I was very surprised. So now China's built this AI model, DeepSeek, based off of older NVIDIA chipsets that cost fraction of the cost of ChatGPT, for example, and is now outperforming ChatGPT, Gemini, right? It's outperforming several of the other mainstream AI tools that are out there for free or even for cost. That was an overnight thing. So now these American institutions are no longer at the top. Now, is that going to change tomorrow? It could. It absolutely could. But this hopefully will cause healthy competition, I guess.
There is no room for rest, that's for sure. And that is a really interesting story with DeepSeek because they were limited with these older chipsets and probably emboldened because they were forced to come up with something based on these kind of outdated technology. So they had to find more ways to be more efficient, and in the process came up with some really novel ways of running their model. It is to say, I wouldn't just rush out and get DeepSeek and install it on your phone. There's lots of unknowns there, and if you read through the privacy, and the terms of service, it's like it's all data is all hosted and managed in China. So if you feel comfortable with that, you do your own risk analysis. And
By the way, that is not unique to DeepSeek. I mean, read the TOS for Gemini or any of these other tools, and you might be
yeah,
surprised. So let's talk a little bit about AI and digital transformation, because just like the DeepSeek, story of coming from nowhere, AI pushing digital transformation has also, I wouldn't say it came from nowhere, but it has been something that has been more prevalent in the news even recently. I think there was a McKinsey report from this past year, or I'm sorry, it's 2023, that was talking about companies who use AI were 2.4 times more likely to report EBIT earnings growth of 10% or more. I mean, that's huge. Now, does that mean that just by using AI, you have the ability to uncover optimizations, cost savings here and there? I think there's a strong argument that that's exactly what it means, and I think that as time goes on and more of these AI tools are incorporated into the workplace as a usual thing, we will see more and more companies uncovering certain optimizations. And it's probably even things that they already have known about, but just haven't had a time to get to, right?
yeah, and those stories are all over. I mean, there's a technology incubator I was reading about. They were able to reduce response times on queries from 24 hours to 6 hours. That translates into a savings of 120K annually. So medium-sized business, that's a big chunk of change. We see reports of there's a retail company review that implemented AI-driven inventory management systems that reduces the stock out by 30%. All kinds of crazy improvements to be had.
Which actually kind of translates into another thing that I want to talk about, which is the ROI, right, of implementing AI. These specific use cases that you're talking about, anyone who has kind of customer interaction, if they're able to make their customer interaction more efficient because they're using a chatbot, that's going to drive up customer satisfaction. That's going to drive up their loyalty. Let me give you an example. So I've used several different banks, right, over the course of my life. And there are some banks that I really enjoy using because of their self-service, because of their automation, because of their website or their app or whatever it is, that I can get what I need to do very quickly, very easily, and it's universal, right? And there are some banks that I felt like I just had to jump through hoops all the time, and it was almost impossible to get what I needed to get. And I'm a fairly intelligent guy. I usually read the terms of service. I usually read, that book that the banks give you when you open an account, so I understand what my liability is. I'm a bit of a nerd, but I did work for a bank for a while, so there's kind of an excuse there. So it was very frustrating to me with some of these banks that, just to get a live person for one thing that I needed, I would have to call some 800 number and be transferred 3 times, wait on, hold for a half an hour just to ask a simple question. And it's something that, after I got the answer, I say, where can I find this later? And they would say, well, you have to call in. Why? Why would I want to do that? That doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, same. I mean, I've been going just trying to find that like chat help for years now, just because it's been the quickest avenue. And now we're already at the point where it's not even clear if the chatbot is human or not. And I used to really care, and I would type in human please because the chatbot was so horrible. But now with AI integration into the chat technology, it's gotten a lot better where I'm not so concerned that you're not dealing with a human as long as the information is accurate. Earlier, you mentioned AI personification, and that makes me think about liability and where things rest if AI gives you the wrong information. And that's coming up a lot more too, related to a chatbot. I know there was something. This is like classic AI now since it's a year old, but there was a story from Air Canada you might have heard about where someone was in the customer service chat asking about how to get a bereavement fare. Chatbot gave him this information and said he could book a flight, ask for the refund after he gets there. He did, and then the Air Canada customer service turned him down because that's not their policy. Turns out their AI chatbot hallucinated that answer. So it created an interesting legal case. Air Canada was saying, well, we didn't say that. The chatbot said that. So it's responsible for its own decisions.
Well, I don't think
And
the chatbot's going to give you any money.
thankfully decided that no, the buck stops with the company who implemented that. But I think we're going to see a lot more of those cases and a lot more precedents set for what does it mean is, and this is going to get into some weird philosophical stuff, but as we're having more and more discussions about AI getting actual personhood and reaching consciousness and all that out there, we're really going to start asking questions about who's liable. The company who developed the model, the company that implemented the AI tool, all that kind of stuff, or the AI itself.
Right, right. That is a very interesting topic because time has been for years. It doesn't matter if the company itself developed a technology or a solution.
Mm.
If the company offers that technology or solution or offers that as an experience for the customer, then the company is liable, right? If anything goes wrong, which is why a lot of companies don't have trampolines in their waiting rooms, or whatever, because there's liability there. With AI, there's a part of me that agrees that it should fall in the exact same category. Nobody forced that company to turn on that AI chatbot. Nobody forced it to use its LLM, which they supplied the data for, right? It's garbage in, garbage out. It depends on whatever biases are in that AI can see in your data to make an informed decision. That chatbot for Air Canada may have hallucinated, or it may have drawn a conclusion that there's a precedent that was set on some other case or cases that it was able to glean from the data that it has. So it's like, no, this has happened in the past, so this is perfectly acceptable to offer now.
Yeah, and that's a perfect maxim. The garbage in, garbage out. It still applies, and it just underscores the careful implementation of AI systems. And a lot of companies are rushing to be competitive and didn't take a careful approach, or with the test it adequately and test their models, review their models, have the right data reviews before they set these things loose in their business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, That's why what AI responsible and or responsibility has been at the forefront of a lot of conversations with Microsoft, with Google, with AWS, over the last year and a half. I mean, that's been a topic of conversation because everyone understands that AI is not it's not going back in the bottle, right? The genie's out, and it's going to be a part of normal everyday life. So, what parameters need to be set, And so, I think that that is something that is just not going to change, And I think that those limitations do need to be defined, and they do need to be probably revised as time goes on, as different cases come and go, right? I mean, that's normal. I don't want to say human behavior, evolutionary behavior. There's existence behavior. I mean, you learn as you go because something that you've never encountered before has happened now. So what's going to happen next time?
Yeah, and it's difficult because we're between a rock and a hard place. You have to move at speed to stay competitive, but taking a careful approach is also warranted. So finding a balance there, and again, it comes back to risk management and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up because I do want to touch briefly on that. So risk management, in my opinion, has to be a part of every evaluation for every piece of technology that comes across your desk as a business, and as you evaluate it to decide whether it makes sense to implement it. Even if someone can give you a great use case or use cases that are applicable to you and your business, you need to ask yourself now, what are the other sides of the equation, right? What are the potential drawbacks? What is the worst case scenario, and am I prepared to handle that? Or do I have a plan in place to deal with that? And a lot of places, to your point, John, who want to remain competitive tend to gloss over risk management. They'll do it as a token part of the evaluation so they can say, oh yeah, we did that and we have a report and we've outlined all the bad stuff, and we've reviewed it and legal has signed off on it and we're good to go. And that's not necessarily always completely accurate, I should say. Not to say that people are not doing their due diligence, but I think that a lot of the time businesses, to remain competitive and to keep afloat, will make decisions before they probably should.
There's more attention being paid, thankfully, to testing, what they call red team testing too. Where you're getting in and trying to break the systems, and you have to use the tools that the bad guys have in order to be prepared. But you can guarantee that the other guys, like bad guys that are trying to get in your systems, they have taken those restrictions off. So they're seeing a lot of those tools kind of become available for testers to use, and I think it's important that they use those with the gloves off and see what the problems could be or what could happen.
Well, one thing though, I will say, as we were talking about the garbage in, garbage out, the bias that comes from any of these LLMs that are out there, it's almost impossible at its core to get rid of bias, right? Because everybody is a product of bias, how they were raised or how they were trained or, whatever it happens to be. So I don't want to pretend like there is a world where you can devise some kind of LLM that is bias free. I don't think that that exists. I think that there are different flavors and you can try your best to make it as accommodating as possible, but there's always going to be some kind of bias. I remember when I first got access to the internet, right? And my children have never been without it. And they grew up in a completely different environment. This whole online presence, social media stuff, all these things that to me are manageable and not required. To them, that's life. So my point is, those people that, program the LLMs might be from that generation where they actually had to use their imagination. They had to walk around in the yard with sticks, and they weren't in front of a screen all the time. And I think that there's something about that enhances the creativity of a person, right? When you're out there using your imagination to come up with ideas and thoughts and all these things. And not to say there's not a creative element in, this next generation or the one after. I mean, there are, right? I think it's different though. But it makes me a little worried. What happens when those people get old or die off, and then it's the next generation that didn't grow up using their imagination that are in charge and trying to make all these decisions? Then who's programming the machines? Is it the machines that are programming the machines? Because that seems a little scary to me.
Well, it's happening, and that's what gets into what they call the AI slop. You've heard that term go around where it's we're training it on data. It's out there now, from either pre-fed data sets or now more and more just from internet live data. But when more of that data has been generated by AI, it's going to be self-referential, and I'm worried about less creativity over time if it's just going to be AI feeding off AI. But if I could speak a little bit to the comment about bias, it does exist, and it's been shown that facial recognition models prefer different skin tones, and a lot of it is maybe not consciously programmed in, but a lot of these like developers will test it based on their own firsthand knowledge of their own reality without considering a wider range that's out there that they should program in. So when you get a bunch of developers just focusing on programming without perhaps wider training in terms of what to be aware of or implicit bias, it's you get those programmed into the system. There's been reports of loan applications being denied from certain demographics because it's based on past history. You're feeding in the best and the worst of humanity into those systems.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And now we're pretty much talking about the user experience perspective, in AI design, right? And I think that all these things feed into what people experience when they're using these tools that are driven by AI. And that is something that we need to think about, especially in digital transformation, about how we define what our customer journeys are and what they need to be, right? And how we're going to use these tools to enhance those journeys and make sure that they are as close to without bias as we can. So there is a bit of an ethical concern, I think, that goes into these types of
Huge.
experiences and these designs, right?
I mean, look what happened with the UHC. I mean, that's a big part of that is, rests on the shoulders of some decisions being made by their AI tools, which may or may not have been allowed to stand. So it's, it has to come with ethical concerns because these tools are everywhere now in society. So
they're not going to stop. I mean, if you just want to look around at just our normal everyday stuff that we do nowadays, look at all the self-driving automobiles that are out there, not just the Teslas, but there's all these different EVs that are working on self-driving technology, and right. That's IoT, that's AI at the edge, that's all these things that have to happen in real time, more or less, and you can't have bias when somebody's steering a car through a downtown area where people were crossing the street, right? And I didn't recognize that person because they're not the right shape or the right color or whatever. I mean, that's
right. Yeah,
terrible.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm having some of these conversations with my son too about we're teaching cars how to make these decisions, but we have trouble making these decisions ourselves. So how are we going into those algorithms? Where do you protect the occupants of the car in a self-driving car above everything else? It's just a really interesting time for sure.
It very much is. It very much is, and I think that I am actually constantly amazed at the today that we live in, considering, just like I was saying before, I remember a time before the internet. I remember dial-up modems, and I remember, bulletin board systems, and I remember all these things. It was always science fiction. It was always like, oh yeah, Star Trek, computer do this, computer do that. I'm like, that'll never happen. Look where we are and where it's going to go to, and it is amazing seeing the AI, just in robotics, right? Can you talk to me a little bit about, the convergence of automation tools with robotics and with AI?
So that's one of the big things we're going to see coming up now. I think agentic AI, so-called, is right on the horizon, and that's where you're having these AI tools not only answer questions or analyze things, but they're actually doing things, right? And you give them access to the internet, you give them access to your personal accounts, perhaps your data, you can have your agents plan your week and book restaurants, book a flight, take care of the mundane tasks in your life. So you have your own executive assistant, and then you take that agent, stick it into an autonomous robot, and then you can see all the sci-fi there and the possibility. But that's right on our doorstep.
Right. Right. I mean, there's Tesla's Optimus, but at CES this year, there was, I think I counted like 15 different humanoid robots that are assistants. They're set to be assistants in some way or fashion for people, and not just for elderly healthcare, home care kind of things, but just like as a companion, all the time doing different things for you. That's amazing to me. What about the methodologies behind that? Have you heard of this I think it's called BOAT.
Business orchestration and automation technology is what this stands for, and that's a new framework I've seen. So basically, is coordinating automation tools, robotics, and all that with AI integration throughout everything. You're looking at platform services, robotics, and automation all together with AI. And there's all the new frameworks coming out all the time, and that it's hard to keep up with all the acronyms.
I'm sure, and I'm sure it's going to get worse as it goes forward
Yeah,
because everyone's going to want their own type of framework that they want to use. But that is very
for
interesting when
sure.
you think about something that controls the orchestration of different platforms and systems and solutions from a holistic point of view, and then can drill down into the automation and say, okay, well, this person always wants, I don't know, a drink while they're sitting down watching TV at 6 p.m. So I'm going to bring them a drink proactively, and I know, and it's going to learn what type of drinks they want, and maybe they want different drinks on different days, and all these things.
Yeah,
That is incredible. When you were talking about just a minute ago, allowing, access to all your personal data so you can have
Mhm.
your own personal assistant. I mean, that sounds great on the service. Who wouldn't want a Jarvis, right? That you just take
Yeah,
care of everything. You can ask it anything. It knows everything. It takes care of it. If there needs to be a payment, has access to your accounts. It can take care of all that. Shipping, book your flights. It knows that you don't want to sit in the middle. You want to sit on, the aisle or whatever it happens to be. And probably knows your point status to see if you have an upgrade available, all that stuff. It sounds wonderful. The other side of it is, from a security aspect,
yeah,
how do I know that it's not giving my data to somebody else, to these airlines, to whoever it's having, interactions with, right? So that and of course, again, being from a security background, that's the first thing that pops into my mind.
yeah. No, that's a good thought. And I mean, as we've seen too, depending on the time of day and where you're logging in from, you could get different prices on those airline tickets. So, who's to say there aren't machinations in the background kind of guiding your agent into purchasing tickets for them rather than airline B? It's going to take an incredible amount of trust and understanding on what's going on in the background.
But I think things like hyper personalization probably couldn't be possible if these systems didn't have access to your data, right? If they didn't know what your personal
Yeah,
preferences were, if it didn't know where you like to sit or what types of meals you like on your flight or any of that stuff, I think
yeah.
that it would be very difficult to have a level of that personal touch, that Jeeves, that Jarvis, whatever it is, who knows you, right? To make sure that you're satisfied with stuff.
I was going back to visit some family and going through the Detroit airport. They had something called a parallel reality experience. It was really interesting. It sort of reminded me of this like Minority Report situation, but you voluntarily signed into the system. It would track you based on where you are in the airport. This was contained in this one system, and you would look up at a monitor and you would see a personalized message on the monitor. In this case, it was my flight information. Someone standing next to me would see something else. So if they signed up on in the same system, the monitor had technology where it would point light based on your location in your vicinity. But if someone's standing right next to you, they would see their own personalized message. Or if they weren't signed up in the system, they would see a generic message.
That sounds too good to be true. If you're standing side by side next to somebody looking up at a monitor, of course, I guess
Yeah.
there's distance and there's different factors and stuff. I can't imagine that you would see one message and somebody right next to you would see a different message. That would be incredible.
I tested it with my kid, and this is the thing. If he was standing next to me about a foot away, he saw the generic message. He was standing right with me, then he saw my message. It's not a perfect implementation, but it really did highlight the possibilities, and I could see how that could be really useful going through the airport. Oh, your baggage is on this carousel, da da da. Your flight's late.
Yeah, you're
You
going
know,
this way, go this way, go to this gate.
how,
Yeah.
yeah, but however, it gets into the whole Minority Report, Philip K. Dick world where it's like, do you want something trailing you, knowing who you are 24/7?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the transformation and how we can put the human element into it. So, when we talk about humanizing digital transformation, you hit on it a little bit earlier before when you were talking about people worried about, getting replaced, and I
Yeah,
think that switching that mindset to being augmented rather than replaced, that goes a long way. But I think that there's other things too. I think that there is a certain responsibility that the leaders of the company, the organization have, right? To
yeah,
push AI into the right places and to, as a strategy, have a goal in mind that AI is trying to solve for. So there's a couple things, right? There's a culture, right, that has to be on board with not only innovation, but the ability and the willingness to adapt to new changes. And
Yeah.
anyone who's ever been through any kind of change management process knows that everyone fears change, right? If you don't understand it, there's going to be pushback. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be like, I'm not sure this is the right thing, and that's fair. We fear what we don't understand. So there has to be a culture of, hey, it's going to be okay. It's going to be different from what it is now, but it's going to be okay. We're going to get through it together. Everyone's on board. No
Mhm.
one's going to get left behind. So I think that there's that element, but there's also a willingness to learn that has to be driven from the top down. We have to be able to collaborate between different segments of the business, right? For example, in our business, we have a creative arm, we have a product based arm, we have a marketing based arm, we have a consulting arm, but we can all work together to make a solution for a client, right? It may involve us as consultants going in to do some kind of a digital estate assessment first and then pull in, okay, we need a SME in, whatever it happens to be, Oracle or SQL or whatever. And we also need somebody who is very good on infrastructure. So I need somebody to design a new solution, and I need somebody to build, as an engineering segment, something for their financials. And then I need someone to come in for the web and help out with a web refresh. And by the way, we're going to do
Yeah.
some marketing content here. So we're going to need a campaign, on and on and on. But it's a holistic thing that we can all come together to solve problems for organizations, right? All under digital transformation, getting from where they are to where they need to be. All right. Well, thanks very much. We appreciate your time. Talk again soon.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks.